Jeff, can you take a look at this one for me?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Hot mic, hot mic.
Thank you.
All right. I have 7 o'clock, actually 7:01. So let's get going. 7:02. Welcome everyone to the March 21st, 2023 public meeting of the Moorestown Board of Education, which has been properly noticed as set forth in the agenda. May I please get a moment of silence? Please rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would you take roll, please, James?
Mrs. Arcaro Burns,
Present.
Mrs. Fallows Macaluso,
Here.
Dr. Myatt,
Here.
Mrs. Miller.
Here.
Mrs. Morano,
Here.
Mr. Romano, Mr. Weeks,
Present.
Mrs. McCopolis,
Here.
Mr. Villanueva.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Well, welcome everyone to the March board meeting. Tonight, we will be reviewing the budget in follow-up to the budget workshop that we had just a couple of weeks ago. So James will be our guest of honor this evening and present the budget for the board's consideration and approval. By way of brief update with respect to the superintendent search, I'm told by our search firm that we have roughly 20 candidates that have either applied or are in the pipeline, and that we will shortly after spring break be reviewing those candidates' credentials and be discussing with our search firm who they recommend and who we as a board believe should come in for interviews. And while we don't have an exact timeline quite yet, my hope and expectation is that we have interviews either in late April or early to mid-May for the spot of the permanent superintendent. So that's really all I wanted to talk about and give a brief update about, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Bollendorf.
Thank you, Mark. Well, happy spring, everybody. It's finally here. It's nice that we started this meeting tonight. It was still daylight outside. That was kind of cool. It's the first time I navigated that parking lot and it wasn't dark. So at my age, that's a good thing. Congratulations to all of our kids that performed in our spring musicals at both high school and WAMS, and reminder that Susical's coming up at UES. I promises to be a great show. Also want to congratulate our boys basketball team and our unified sports team on their tremendous seasons. And as we look forward to getting into spring sports, there is something I do want to talk about. There was an expectation that one of the presentations that were going to happen tonight was a presentation on our CCEIS, which essentially is for comprehensive coordinated early intervention services. And essentially what that means is through the IDEA, and through the NJDOE, schools are monitored, and they are monitored for something called disproportionality. It's a scary word. It's something that would advise a district when something seems out of whack, out of balance. More kids of a particular disability or type are being handled in a certain way where other kids are not. And nobody likes that kind of news, right? But it's important, and it's important for us as human beings to recognize when things can be better, and we all should know that. As an educator for as long as I've been in scenarios where I've learned things weren't quite as I thought that they were. And if you're truly somebody that cares about kids and cares about people, that's something that you should never shy away from. And I find in Moorestown a district that doesn't want to shy away from those things. So they've been actively engaged in work for this proposition, and a fuller report on that work and what it means to us will be given in April. And it's important stuff. But it's an opportunity for me to tell you that in my years, in all my years, the only thing that I ever thought was most important as an educational leader was to try to create an environment where kids love coming to school and teachers love being there and teaching. And when you can capture those things and you can support people in that way, that's when good schools, good districts go from being good to great. So to ignore or to not pay attention to the world around us, the way people feel, to not try to provide an environment where everybody feels accepted for who they are, can't ever be the momentum and the direction of really a truly great public school system. Kids need to feel supported and loved. Teachers need to feel supported and loved. People in general need to feel to be supported and loved. And I think it's really important that that's the kind of environment that we embrace here as a community. I'm proud to work with this board because I really feel strongly that the board is committed to that proposition. And I think that the work that we will continue to do together will continue to help people feel comfortable to allow folks to be who they are and work in this wonderful environment. So I hope that you'll be here next month and see that presentation. I think it's great work, and it's work that will never quite frankly end. And that's an important thing to remember. So with that being said, they're really all the comments that I had. I do want to introduce James, who has been working his tail off delivering this budget. And I'm very proud to introduce him to you because I'm very proud of the work that this team and this board has done in putting this budget together for us for next school year. So without further ado, you're up.
Before we do that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
That's right. We're going to get the kids on.
A couple
My
items.
bad.
First off, I missed the first agenda item, and we need to approve the minutes from the February 21st and March 7th meetings, both regular and executive sessions. So could I get a motion for that, please? All in favor? Any noes or abstentions?
Extension. Abstain from February 21st, regular and exec.
Anyone else? All right. Now with that, I know you're all dying to sit through the budget presentation, but we thought it might be helpful if you guys went ahead and gave us the student report. So we got some new faces here. So why don't you start us off and introduce yourself, please?
Here filling in for Tom Warren, so that's why I'm here.
Thank you. Why don't we go on right on down the line? You can take the mic too. Don't be bashful.
Yeah, we probably should be coaching it better. If you have a report, you guys could all step up and one after the other, do your report at the microphone so the folks watching at home can hear you.
So you all know who I am now. So I guess we'll just jump right into it. I'm here to report, and it would have made more sense for Amin to go first. But I'm reporting on two committees that we have in the process of being made for our student councils. So the first one is the Hall of Fame committee. So, what that's doing is it's going to put together a list of students and or faculty members that want to be recognized for various reasons. So this is going to be composed of students at the high school, and that's really as simple as that. The next committee that has not been, we don't have any members for yet. That's the high school handbook and district policies. So, it's exactly what it sounds like. We're just reviewing policies that we have that we don't like or that we do like, or anything the students feel needs change. That's what's going to be reviewed in this committee that does not have any members yet. We'll hear about the committees that we do have members for when my friends speak.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to see you all again. I'm Amin Kazmi. I've been here every month. I'm the sophomore class liaison. And it is actually the 125th year of Moorestown High School being in place. And to celebrate this anniversary, as like a recap from last meeting, the advisors and council members have come up with a tour that we're going to give to the members of the class of 1973 or 50 years ago. And to prepare for this event, we've established 3 committees where we've already gotten members for in the council and some out of the council as well. These are the research committee, the video production committee, and designing the tour committee. The names we'll work on, but the research committee will be in charge of looking for and researching like the old layouts of the building. And we're going to present these findings to the alumni, because the alumni, they're used to a much smaller school, and the school has undergone like many extensions. Like we have a whole new floor, like it's probably triple the size by now. I don't know the details. That's what that committee's for. And then next we have the video production committee. It's gonna be in charge of basically compiling like a 5-minute video that's gonna be presented to the alumni when we reach out to them on the day, which is June something. I don't know the exact date, but basically we're gonna present the video on their arrival. It'll basically be welcoming them, and it'll show a couple of the improvements to the school that are like the big obvious ones. And then finally we have the tour committee. This committee will be in charge of actually making the tour, like planning a route, planning on how the tour is actually going to go on in June. And they'll come, and like the people that are giving the tour will like give like fun facts, like be able to point out, oh, this hall was not here 50 years ago, but here we'll show you what all the classrooms look like now, maybe like the new tech we have, because like it's all new to them. And a lot of the planning is still under works, but if we work hard enough, which I know our council is really good at, we can make this a really great tradition for our high school that we can continue in years forth. And I'm going to pass it off to the junior liaison. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bhavika, the junior class liaison. And as Mr. Wallendorf mentioned, it's officially spring, and it was actually my first time driving to a board meeting. So light was a really great advantage to have. Thank you. Thank you. I just have my permit, though, not my license, but still really great achievement for me. But on the note of spring, I'm here to talk about the high school's biggest spring event ever, which is prom. So after some very stressful AP exams, juniors and seniors will have a chance to relax and get ready for prom on May 12th. Prom 2023 will take place at Lucian's, which is a very beautiful event venue. And we have not yet decided what we would like this year's theme to be, although I have some ideas that I'm very excited about. And even though prom is a couple months away, we have a prom-related event coming up next Thursday on March 30th, which is the prom fashion show. So this year, our prom fashion show will be hosted by Dahlia's Prom Boutique and Formal Expressions. So what that is that during all of the lunch periods, 15 junior boys and 15 junior girls will walk together in pairs down the cafeteria to show off their dresses and suits in order to encourage students of the high school to purchase their prom outfits from Dahlia's Prom Boutique and Formal Expressions. I picked out my prom dress last Thursday at Dahlia's Prom Boutique, and it's a very beautiful place. They have many staff members that were willing to help me, and just racks of dresses of many different types and colors. So I would definitely recommend the place. It's great for prom dresses. And for the past few months, we've been reporting on the Love Fair And one update from this event is that the junior class plans to volunteer at Brandywine Senior Living, which was one of the organizations present at the Love Fair. So when we were originally planning for the Love Fair, I actually got to speak with the representatives from Brandywine, and they were very excited and willing to work with high school students. So we are also very excited to work with them. And the junior class plans to schedule days during the week when we can visit Brandywine residents and just spend time with them. Whether that's reading with them or simply just chatting with them, we want to be there for them. And we would like to open this opportunity up to the whole high school, any grade level, and student council member or not. So that's what we're looking forward to this spring at Moorestown High School. And I would now like to pass it off to our senior liaison. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Mia Savage. I'm filling in for Lucas McGill. I am one of the town council people, so I'm not the liaison, but I wanted to report out on the recent senior trip that we just had, and we think that everyone had a good time. We went for a week. We went to Universal and Disney, and we had all 5 days. When we were going there, some flights were delayed, like Spirit. The AC flight was really delayed, but it all worked out. We got all of the days in the week, and none of them were delayed home, and it was a really good time. And moving forward, like she said, prom and all of the project graduation is still working on under wraps. And yard for sale signs are getting up in purchases, and just everything is under wraps right now, going towards the end of the year. But I'm happy to report that the senior trip was a very good time. So thank you.
Great. Thank you to all our representatives. You're more than welcome to stick around or get a ride home with Vavika. It's up to you guys. And with that, James, we'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Villanueva. And first, let me start by thanking all of our administrators and everyone that has worked on the 23-24 budget. It is an endless process. It certainly doesn't start and it certainly doesn't end, sorry. So thank you for all the support in that. I appreciate it. So let me see if our clicker works from this far away. Thank you. Thank you, Dylan. Can you go to the previous slide, please? One more over.
That was a work.
All right, perfect. Now the clicker is not going to work, I don't think. So what we're going to talk about ultimately is our budget development process. So we're going to talk about the goals that we utilize for our budgetary alignment. Obviously, everything we purchase stems back to some sort of overarching goal here, and we're going to talk about those goals. And then when we go through our budget highlights section, we'll talk a little bit further about what those highlights, the goals that those highlights tie to. We'll talk a little bit about the budget development process. What do we go through to ultimately get to a balanced budget here? We'll review our revenues, we'll review our appropriations, we'll talk about some of the budget adjustments. So the board has been fully in tune with this entire process. So thank you for that. I appreciate all of the questions that I've received and the thoroughness that the board has taken here. So we'll talk about some of those adjustments that have been made since ultimately our budget workshop, which it feels like it was yesterday, but now it is, I believe, 2 weeks ago. We'll go through the budget introduction, where the budget currently stands as of today. And then ultimately we'll talk about what is the tax impact of the 23-24 budget. Can you go to the next slide, please, Dylan? So the goals that we created for budgetary alignment consist of the 3 goals that are seen there. Goal 1 is sustain and expand upon instructional supports developed during the last 3 years. Sustain and expand upon the level of social and emotional learning support over the last 3 years. to address student wellness. And goal 3, expand upon district systems that ensure safety and security across all facets of district operations. So again, there will be a budget highlight section where at the top of the slide, it will indicate exactly what those highlights are tied to, those goals that they're tied to. Can you go to the next slide, please? So our budget development process. So we just went through the goals. It starts ultimately with conversations around those goals and creation of those goals through stakeholder input. From there, we ultimately create a budget manual, which is a lengthy 100+ page document that is a good Saturday, Sunday read. And our school administration develops their building level budgets with input ultimately from faculty and content supervisors. Our central administration has department level budgets. They consist primarily of technology, curriculum, personnel, and facilities. And transportation is one that's missing from there. And then ultimately revenue and appropriations are updated based on finalized numbers. So the budget is a very fluid process. Ultimately, we create a high level budget in January. We don't get a state aid number until typically the first week of March. And all along the process, all sorts of appropriations and revenues are updating for actual numbers that become known over time. Can you go to the next slide, please? So part of the budget development process, and it's actually a QSAC requirement, we actually have to develop what's called a budget calendar. So this is a very high level overview of our budget calendar. Our detailed budget calendar consists of certain committee level meetings that we have discussions about the budget as well. But ultimately, the 2 bolded areas on March 7th, we held our board budget workshop to discuss where the budget was at as of that date. And then tonight we are introducing our budget. In the future, looking at our future dates, tomorrow I will submit the budget to the county office. It goes through a thorough process where the state reviews the budget line by line, and we ultimately have to answer certain questions that they may have during that review process. Once they are finished with that review process, they give us the stamp of approval and ultimately approve the budget for advertisement. And then we will finally adopt the budget on April 25th. And that's actually when we actually hold a public hearing for the budget as well. Can you go? Thank you. At this point, I'll turn it over to Dr. Benton.
Good evening. So a few highlights for curriculum and instruction. Last year or this year, we approved a new adoption of our ELA curriculum in grades K through 5. So next year's budget will include our next phase of that adoption for grades 6 through 8, as well as new curricula in other content areas across mostly our secondary courses. We continue to make revisions and standards update in preparation for QSAC compliance, which will begin next year. The College Board has made some significant changes in the way that they delivered their instruction using digital platforms. So curriculum writing this year will include course updates to help us transition our teaching and learning resources to the digital platform. And similar to how we are phasing in our ELA curriculum, we will begin our ESL or multilingual learner curriculum rewrite for this year across 3 grades. And under curricular resources, as we always do, we have textbooks and digital learning access renewals that support 23 courses and curricular programs, as well as we continue to use an integrated approach. So you see digital instructional and assessment platforms that we are using K to 12. Under professional development, you can see that we have 3 focal points for our district professional development plan: multi-tiered systems of support, multilingual learners, as well as diversity and inclusion and cultural responsiveness. And these are tied to both state initiatives as well as state standards. And also included in our professional development that you see every year are the things that you see listed here for both teacher presenters and outside presenters, as well as AP Summer Institute's new teacher orientation and embedded support teams that will support our upcoming K to 8 math pilot, which will not be in this curriculum. This budget, but in the next year's budget. Next slide. And our second goal and first and second goal has to do with support for our student learning, as well as support for student wellness. So really looking at students in a holistic sense and understanding that our budget needs to support both arms of student learning in schools. So we have continued PD and curricular resources that focus on small group and guided instruction, as well as intervention support staff that we are maintaining from the grant. And then we also have additional staff in the budget to support increased enrollment needs. Under student wellness, Character Strong is a social emotional learning program that we adopted at UES, and they will be in year 2. And the SEL committee at WAMS has selected to adopt Character Strong, the middle school curricular program. So they will be in year 1. So both of those are in this year's budget. And then, as we said on the previous slide, a professional development focus specifically on fostering diversity, inclusion, and sense of belonging in classrooms and school. And we have a district mental health professional that is also being maintained from the grant, as well as Care Solace, which we brought in last year, that is an online platform and offers the ability to do counseling service referrals at a higher, more intensive level beyond what the school can provide.
So for the technology highlights, the things that are in the budget, maintenance of our one-to-one program, one-to-one device program, replacing 2 grades of devices, a set of Windows laptops and another set of Chromebooks. Replacement of all of the access points throughout the district. We have 40 new ones that we bought in this year. They've been working out well, so we're going to replace the rest of them. We do have a little bit of E-rate grant funding to cover part of the cost of that project. It's going to give us better coverage and throughput. We're looking at a new work order and asset management system for both IT and buildings and grounds assets and work orders. Several security camera additions and replacements. Some funding for a security audit for an outside firm to look at some of our overall security positioning. Very important in this day and age. An expansion of endpoint and multi-factor authentication. This is another security thing to make sure that we're as secure as we can be and try to move us towards a better tier of cybersecurity insurance coverage.
Thank you, Mr. Arian. Thank you, Dr. Benton. So the human resources section of the budget and the budget highlights, we ultimately went through the budget requests in the sense of human resources and prioritize those against our goals. So we prioritized 2.8 positions that were originally supported through grants so we can maintain those positions moving forward. We identified new needs supporting programming and student needs connecting to goals 1 and 2. And the net impact for the board is a net 1.0 FTE increase because we were able to identify certain areas and certain populations through attrition and enrollment shifts to better prioritize our support staff. In operations, and this connects to goal 3 ultimately, our district systems, capital outlay. One item that you'll see through the appropriation slide in the future is a large jump in our capital outlay budget. That consists of 2 items, a PA replacement here at our middle school and a Univent replacement at Baker. That Univent replacement was included in the 2019 failed referendum. The Univent replacement, the PA system costs $400,000, estimated $400,000 to replace. The Univents, the total cost of that is $2.2 million roughly in estimated work, but we're able to do that for a local cost of $650,000. We're able to do that at a local cost of $650,000 because we set aside $600,000 of ESSER funding to go for Univent replacements. And then also there is a ROD grant opportunity currently with the state of New Jersey that we will be completing an application for. The state set aside $350 million for ROD grants, which is 60%, 40% split. So ultimately, this is the equivalent of a referendum type of split on this type of project. So we're able to do $2.2 million worth of work for the local cost of $650,000. A budgetary and personnel system replacement. So we are reviewing currently replacing our budgetary and personnel systems to have better efficiency and security there. An LED project. So our lease purchase, we always like to include an LED project into our lease purchase because that helps pay for the interest that is associated with the lease purchase. The reduction in energy costs helps offset that. Transportation highlights. One thing that you'll see in a future slide is this was a very tough budget to ultimately balance because the CPI increase that exists. The CPI increase comes straight from the state of New Jersey and is marked at 5.89% currently for the 23-24 budget. We reviewed our driver salaries, and then we also allocated an additional budgeted amount for additional cameras on buses. And facilities maintenance, we do have one aging truck, so this is to better manage our fleet and replace that truck. So talking about our revenues a little bit, our local tax levy, currently the budget includes a 2% increase on our local tax levy, which amounts to 1.375 million. Our tax levy, it's important to note, our tax levy makes up 83.88% of this budget in terms of revenues. Our state aid was initially budgeted flat. As the board is aware, we are on the positive side of S2 legislation. So we ended up seeing a $525,000 increase from state aid. We became aware, I believe, on March 2nd of that increase. That represents roughly 6.47% of our budget. Budgeted fund balance. So board members will recall at our budget workshop, I did my best to explain budgeted fund balance to you guys. It consists primarily of our audited excess surplus, which we will be approving our audit tonight from 21-22, as well as allowable adjustments to free general fund excess balances that are projected as of the end of this year. So ultimately, what does that relate to? $824,000 increase in our revenues ultimately. Our other revenue sources, they were adjusted for the ending budget ultimately, based off of projections and actual numbers that we do now expect. So we have a $34,000 increase there that we are expecting. So this slide here shows ultimately our state aid and ultimately the impact of S2 legislation. S2 legislation was passed ultimately to move districts that were underfunded to move funding sources to those districts, and districts that were overfunded to move funding sources away from them and balance out to be in accordance with the actual funding formula. So you can ultimately see that on this slide. So the green line at the top there is what's called our uncapped aid. That is what we should have received in those given years. The blue line is what we actually received. So you can see we did not receive the actual amount that is in accordance with our funding formula. S2 was designed to narrow that approach, and you can certainly see it here. So this year, our uncapped aid was roughly 5.5 million, and our actual state aid that we're seeing is 5.4 million. So the difference there is 166,000. S2 does have remaining years, so I do expect at some point in time that green will touch the blue and the blue will touch the green and the yellow will be zero, and that's ultimately the goal of S2. Another big part of our budget is our extraordinary aid budget. So this is a 3-year look ultimately at our extraordinary aid budget. In 1920, we budgeted 600,000 of anticipated revenues for extraordinary aid. In 2021, 600,000. In 21-22, 750,000. And we're expecting in 22-23, 900,000. We're expecting 900,000, and we've increased that number over those years because the state down at the bottom, you can see 275 million, 400 million, 420 million, and they just announced 420 million into their budget ultimately. So these are student by student applications, so they are dependent on actual costs that exist. That's why nothing else is filled in on that 22-23 year. And this is a reimbursement basis grant. So in 21-22, you can see that we spent roughly $6.5 million and we got 2.3 million ultimately back from the state. Can you go to the next slide, please? Our revenues, this is our other sources ultimately that consist primarily of tuition, facility rentals, other governmental amounts, and then other sources. So really everything is pretty constant and flat here. There's nothing kind of crazy jumping out. The other governments is increasing, but that is because of the extraordinary aid increase that we saw on the last slide. Looking at our appropriations, so salaries, we know what our salaries will be for year two. We're in year 2 or 3 with our MEA contract, and our MA contract expires at the end of this school year. The Administrators Association and the board is actively in negotiations for a successor contract. Our insurance, so we originally projected a 5% increase on our insurance. Our health insurance came back at 6.4%. Our general lines of insurance came back at 7.5%, and our student accident came back at 1%. Again, this is what presents a significant challenge of budgeting and balancing a budget that has a cap at a 2% levy when everything else is growing by numbers that are 5, 6, 7%. Instructional supplies and materials. So those are budgeted at our school level and are based off of per pupil allocations. And then obviously we have our department level budgets and our capital outlay. We'll go into those in a little bit further detail. On the appropriation side, the big items here, we did anticipate a minimum wage impact because we do have one remaining year to move from $14.13 to $15 an hour. Winter track is included in this budget that we're going to introduce. Our budgetary CPI from the state is 5.89%. The piece down there at the bottom with the highlighted 8%, that's the most recent 2022 fourth quarter calculation on CPI for local public contracts law. So the board, you'll be aware that, last time at the workshop, I discussed anytime we need to renew a contract that was previously bidded out, this is the amount that we can renew it for at that point in time. The 5.89% applies to our transportation contracts that are contracted out. It's a good thing and a bad thing, right? The good thing is hopefully our vendors renew, and we actually have had one vendor of the 4 renew so far. So that's a great thing because we've seen significant increases when they don't renew. So hopefully it does help us there. So adjustments that we've made since our board workshop. Revenue has been increased to the tune of $740,000. Our capital and our maintenance reserves. So we made an effort over the last 2 to 3 years to really grow our capital reserve because a district of this size, our capital reserve really wasn't adequate. This allows us to do those projects, the projects that we saw with the Univent. It allows us to partake in an opportunity where we have a grant opportunity for a 60-40% split. We have to be able to fund the 40% locally. We would never be able to do that type of number through our main budgeting process. So the capital reserve allows us to do that ultimately. Staffing, new positions and requests have been adjusted and removed from the budget. That is $477,000, and then our department building budgets reduced by about $304,000 since our workshop. And our capital outlay was adjusted to ultimately remove some of the other projects and either find another funding source for them or put together a multiple year plan to approach those items. So our current status, this is our revenue as it currently exists today. So we talked about our tax levy, we talked about our state aid, extraordinary aid. You can see the increase there to 900,000. All of our other revenues have been pretty constant. Down at the bottom there, withdrawal from reserves. That was one of the large adjustments that was made to balance the budget. That's a withdrawal from capital reserve of $1,050,000 and a withdrawal from maintenance reserve for $50,000. That's ultimately how we're paying for those projects. And then our budgeted fund balance. On the appropriation side, and this one's always a test of your vision here. the appropriations were adjusted by a little over 1.1 million to ultimately balance the budget, and that was through those avenues that we discussed on the original appropriations. The good thing on this slide here down at the bottom, you do see that we do have a balanced budget for the 23-24 budget. So tax impact. So the first thing, when you look at tax and tax impact and the amount that you can ultimately levy, is you have to consider how much you actually can levy. So looking at our tax impact, you take the pre-budget year tax levy, and we actually had an allowable healthcare adjustment that we could have utilized. The board could utilize that adjustment and what it does allow you to do is it allows you to go over your 2% normal levy. So that adjustment was $463,665. So that's how you come up with the maximum tax levy that you can ultimately take, which is that $70,611,000. The budget contains a 2% increase, which is $70,148,000. So the board not electing to utilize ultimately all of that taxing authority, that goes into what's called bank cap that becomes available for the subsequent 3 years budget cycles. So that will be available in future years if necessary. Next slide. So looking at our ultimate tax impact and our rate review, this is a 5-year review of the rate ultimately. You can see in 23-24, our general fund and our tax rates composed of 2 separate funds, ultimately our general fund and our debt service fund. You can see that our general fund has a 2% increase. Our debt service is anticipated at a 1.05% decrease, for a net total of a 1.81% impact. The actual tax impact is calculated on this slide. On the left side here, we are anticipating an increase in the ratables. The ratables is ultimately the total number of taxable properties in Moorestown Township. So that is ultimately what's helping out decrease that tax rate ultimately. On the average assessed value of $461,559 in Moorestown, the monthly increase for the school levy would be about $9.26 for next year. Does the board have any questions? And thank you always for your support.
Thanks, James. I mean, as always, an incredibly thorough and very helpful presentation. And I know you've been killing yourself working on it. And I really thought that this was going to be, now I know it was a tough budget. It's always tough preparing a budget, but I was really concerned that this year was going to be particularly difficult given that the ESSER funding is sunsetting. Everything is more expensive, right? The consumer price index is 8%. It's 6% for transportation, 8% for other contracts. And so I was very concerned going into this year about what the budget was going to look like. And I'm thrilled. I'm really proud of the work that the district has done, because not only are we maintaining, but we're adding things, which is great. I mean, I know there's at least an additional FTE. We're adding winter track. And there's a lot of great technology initiatives. Always with curriculum and instruction, there are some great initiatives built in there. So I think it's great, and I don't take taxing lightly, and quite frankly, though, this is not the time. You know, we have to continue to pouring our resources into these schools. We're coming off of COVID and the impact of COVID, and we have to continue to make sure that we are addressing those 3 priorities in terms of instruction, SEL, and safety. And I think this budget really effectively lays out how we are prioritizing those things. So thank you to James, to cabinet, to the principals, to supervisors, everybody that was involved in putting this together, because I know it's extremely complicated. It's not easy. I know James has been working very late and was here very early this morning to dot the I's and cross the T's. So very, very appreciative of it. And I just wanted, I flagged here that roughly 84% of the budget is generated by the tax levy. And I guess I'll take a step back. I'm glad that we're not maximizing our taxing authority, right? We could be taxing at a higher level, and we are restraining ourselves, which I think is great. But noting that 84% of our budget is driven by taxes is obviously significant. And, roughly 65% of a homeowner's property tax bill comes to the school. And, I think the board has been talking about this now for a while about, impending growth in town, and with the housing developments that are going to be coming to Moorestown. Some are under construction at the mall. We know that there are others that are going to be planned. I think it's a priority that the school district ensures that there's an accompanying revenue stream for the students that are going to come with those housing developments. And I believe it's a priority of all of ours. And I know that we've had some very preliminary discussions with the township on how we can ensure that we are, getting an equitable amount of revenue as it relates to those new housing projects. And so we look forward to continuing those discussions and working cooperatively with the town to make sure that, we can continue to have these budgets that really show our priorities are to take care of the kids and to make sure that we are providing the best product that we can. So thank you.
I don't have much more to add because you covered most of what I would have said, Mark. And that's primarily commending all of the administration on really, like Mr. Villanueva said, an amazing job to maximize the resources we have in a responsible way. I think one of the things, this is probably at least the 6th time I've gone through this budget process, and I think I'm getting close to understanding it. But no, it is a complex thing. And one of the things I think that's hard to see, but we talked about it in finance and operations. And, I wasn't really going to cover this in the review of the minutes, but it's not just that you've done a good job with maximizing our resources to enable us to make up for the grant funding that we're losing and to keep the level of services. One of the things, we talked about, and we joked that finance and operations was turning into a curriculum meeting because we ask about, let's talk, explain to us the impact that the changes will have on the delivery of instruction to our students. And administration, made some hard decisions, but also we think the right decisions when it comes to continuing to provide the level of service and instruction that our students will benefit from. But I guess the part I wanted to add on was that this budget, the way we're doing this, holding back on some of it, also sets us up for being able to do this in future years. And I think that is also a key part of this that shouldn't be overlooked. That we should, like you said, if S2 continues to take its effect and keep us balanced in the revenue, the fair share that we should be receiving from the state, if you continue to do good things like maximizing our capital dollars by using them for the 40% of covering what we are trying to buy and getting other sources to pay for the other 60%, continuing to do smart things like that are going to help us keep this level of service. So I just wanted to mention that because I think some of that goes unnoticed. Unless you're sitting here like our committee and the larger board looking at these things repeatedly. So just to make sure we're getting that full understanding, or at least that's being acknowledged. Because there's a lot more than it may seem on the surface. So just wanted to add that in. So thanks.
Comments or questions? All right, let's move on to our board committee reports. And Jill, we'll start with communications, please.
Sure. So the communications committee met twice since we had our last Board of Education meeting. And that is Melissa Burns, Brooke Myhat, Mark Villanueva, myself, Joe Bollendorf, and also Dave Tate. We met on February 22nd and we had a good discussion where we talked about Lori Perlow, the consultant that was engaged by the district a couple of years back to provide her ad hoc consulting services as part of a shared services agreement that expires on June 30th of this year. And we talked about how the services have been underutilized for a bunch of different reasons. And we'd like to have her come back and debrief the full communications committee on the work she'd done thus far and align on a plan for moving forward. So Lori did join us at our March 13th communications committee meeting, where she provided an overview of the stakeholder surveys that were conducted on web-based surveys, as well as focus groups with the various stakeholder groups, the parents, the broader community at large, and also faculty and staff. And she identified a number of opportunity areas, themes for us to consider as we move forward. And she set forth some high-level goals that she thinks that we should consider as we modernize and enhance our communications approach as a district. And we agreed that those high-level goals made sense. And we asked her to put together a more comprehensive communications action plan that she's going to provide to us by March 31st. And then I'll be able to share it with the full board. So those minutes went out, but also a copy of the feedback as well as the high-level goals was also circulated to the board. So we're looking forward to seeing what she comes up with and how we can find the resources to really enhance our communications going forward. And I would just say thanks to all of the community members and the faculty and staff that did participate and take time out of your schedules in those feedback focus groups and surveys. The feedback was really valuable and we appreciate it. Anyone have questions?
Okay. Thank you, Jill. Lauren, if you could give us an update on curriculum, please.
Sure. We met on March 9th. In attendance was Dr. Benton, Joe Bollendorf, Dr. Tate, Matt Keith, Mick Weeks, Cheryl McCopolis, Danielle Miller, and myself.
That was his track name.
That's right. We discussed that Dr. Benton was going to present the curriculum committee with a new field trip template. The board, as far as business goes, we approve overnight stays, but in curriculum now, Dr. Benton is going to provide the curriculum committee a monthly day only field trip overview, just so that we can better understand the curricular connections with trips that are happening throughout the district on a daily basis. So she shared that. Mr. Keith came and talked about the program of studies. Well, there's no program of studies changes for the high school for the 2023-2024 school year. For WAMS, Mr. Keith came and explained the theater and communications grade 7 and grade 8 changes that were being made. They were title changes really only so that the description would better follow and represent the curriculum of each course and what was taught. And then there was a discussion on changing enriched art 7 and honors art 8, which was previously honors art 7 and 8. Explaining the rationale behind the update to the title and a description of the breakdown for the progression of the courses from 6th, 7th, and 8th to 9th grade, and the portfolio process that it included. So he kind of gave an overall understanding of why WAMS was moving forward in that direction. There's no curriculum change to any of that. And Matt explained that the change and the rationale and how he was going to communicate that out with the school district and the parent at a parent meeting and follow-up communications. He also was there and discussed a pilot of WAM's grade 7 select ensemble club, went over the rationale for that.
Again, there's no curriculum changes that would be made to accommodate the change. For the rest of this year, it'll be a pilot program. And then he'll present a recommendation moving forward for how that might be incorporated next year. And then there finally was a discussion of WAM's SLE programming for the 2023-2024 school year. Mr. Keith shared the process and the rationale for the adoption of the Character Strong program that was in the budget. And also with the professional development that was in the budget. And we looked at the staff training that was going to be needed and how the school was going to be planning for lessons and programming and delivery of that program in the next school year. Dr. Benton then reviewed with us the new 2023 NJSLS standards in ELA and math. Again, this was informational sharing as the new standards were just sent out by the New Jersey Department of Ed with very limited details. And so Dr. Benton was just monitoring that to make sure that our new purchase of curriculum would be in line with the new standards that were being presented by the state. And then we kind of followed up a discussion based on the budget workshop that we had in between the meetings in this. So that was reflected in a discussion. We're the final product we are now seeing. And then lastly, there was a preview and a lively discussion of the March, what was going to be the March CCEIS presentation that Mr. Bollendorf referenced in his opening remarks, and moving forward and looking forward to the April presentation of that.
Any questions for Lauren? Okay. Finance and operations, Mr. Meeks.
Okay, so we actually met twice, finance and operations, but it still didn't cut down on the overall amount of time we had to meet. We tried. So on March 6th, we met, all of the board members were in attendance on the committee. Myself, Cheryl McCopolis, Claudia Moreno, and Danielle Miller, joined by the administration, Joe Bollendorf, James Heiser, Karen Benton, Carol Butler, Jeff Airy, and Dave Tate. So we spent the beginning of that meeting covering the audit exit conference. We were joined by the principal at Holt McNally Associates, Mike Holt, and also his manager, Dave Gorski, who handled our audit. Basically got a clean bill of health on the audit. Well, first of all, they noted that the audit normally happens in November, but due to a late release in February of the Gadsby 75 pension data, the process was pushed out further while they awaited that. So that's why we had it this month versus back in the fall, or usually it's toward the end of the year. But anyway, the full audit is available to the board if you would like that via James's office. There were no material issues with the overall findings of our audit. However, there was a finding on a compliance requirement, which was a repeat finding related to food service and net cash on hand. Long story short, food service, even though it is a revenue generating area, we're limited into the amount of revenue that we can generate. And due to some just normal processes, we ended up doing better with that because we have such great management of it. But anyway, there's a plan to take care of that. And so because that was found and was reported on, it showed up again in the audit, because by the time you learn about it, you have to figure out a plan and then implement it. So anyway, that is going to be dealt with, and it wasn't really a concern by the auditors. Their overall assessment was that the general fund is in a healthy position. Our committee also reviewed some information about overnight trips. The Combustible Lemons robotics engineering team is taking 2 out-of-state trips to continue their successful ascent to being the best robotics team in the country. They are going to a conference in Pennsylvania, one in Texas, and then also boys lacrosse has a trip that's in New Jersey. And they were going to clean up their budget, and then that should have gotten James' approval. So the committee recommended accepting those to the larger board. And then also there was a donation for during a track meet, there was a frozen yogurt truck that raised about $250 that was being donated to the district. So that was much appreciated. The bulk of the rest of the meeting was taken up by a discussion of the then current state. Again, this was back on March 6th of the budget. And we went through a lot of the details. Of course, all the challenges were resolved as we talked about earlier today. So that was the March 6th meeting. We also talked that there'll be a bid for grounds going out soon, and that will start looking over updated job descriptions that Carol Butler and her office are working on that will match a new template and have some information on them that needs to be in there. And we'll start reviewing those in April. So going back, let's see. Then we met again on March 20th. All the same people were in attendance. And this one, the meeting yesterday, was just dedicated to getting an update on where this presentation today would be. And pretty much all our discussion matched what was here. And then also in my previous comments, I commented on the things I thought were notable about that. But again, great job on the budget. And that's basically the report. So I don't need to rehash what James just went over.
No, please do.
All right, Dylan, if you could bring up the slides again. Okay.
Well, thank you. Any questions for Mick? All right, moving on to
Thanks.
policy. Claudine.
Thank you. Policy met on March 14th. In attendance was myself, Melissa Burns, Jill Fellows Macaluso, Mark Villanueva, Mr. Bollendorf, and Mr. Tate. We only had a brief item for discussion as the continued evaluation of our policies related to community organization boosters and parent organizations. A continued work in progress, but we're getting closer. And as far as the agenda tonight, we do not have any new policies on first reading. There are only a few on second reading, which we have approved at the last meeting. One of which is policy number 3125. We're amending a mandatory policy that's already in existence related to the employment of teaching staff and reimbursement for certifications and fingerprinting for certain lower dollar threshold employees. We have policy number 143.2, which is also a mandatory policy from the state. One of which, as you can tell from our high school representatives, we already have a policy and we're complying with this new policy already, requiring that we have high school representatives on the board. Policy 5722 has to do with student journalism and define certain aspects of freedom of student expression and related to our media. And policy 5460, which is a mandatory update to some high school graduation requirements. And that's what we have.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Claudine? All right, let's move on to public comment. Could I get a motion to open public comment on agenda items, please?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Right, thank you. So this is public comment on anything that is included in our agenda. The ground rules are set forth in the written agenda. So if anybody has a public comment, please step up to the microphone.
Hi, Allison Simpson, 132 Chestnut Street. Last month, a group of parents and students came before you to ask for your support in reinstating the winter track and field program at Moorestown High School. And we're pleased to hear that we have reason to be optimistic. As I understand, it's part of the proposed budget that's yet to be voted on and has a few more steps to go through, but we wanted to express our gratitude to the Board of Education for hearing us out, for having some one-on-one conversations with some of us to hear the need and the ask, to Superintendent Bollendorf, who is a cheerleader in this as well, to Principal Seibel, to our athletic director at the high school, Sean Cunard, to Mr. Heiser, for your help from the business administration standpoint, to the community and our parents. We had 1,100 community members sign an online petition in an effort to reinstate the program. And mostly we want to recognize our students who voiced their interest, their ask through emails and through getting up here a month ago to ask for your support. So bottom line, you've made a lot of people happy. We know it's not a done deal yet, but we just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment on agenda items? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to close public comment? All in favor? Okay. Moving on to Article 8 of our agenda, reports to the board. Could I get a motion to approve items A1 through 3 as set forth in the agenda, please?
Second.
All in any comments or questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any noes or abstentions? Okay, carries. Article 9. Relating to recommendations of the superintendent. May I please get a motion for the policies for second reading as set forth in section A1? Second. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any noes or abstentions? Thank you. Letter B. Regarding educational programs, may I get a motion for approval of items 1 through 4 of the educational program section of the agenda, please?
So moved.
Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Noes or abstentions? Thank you. Moving on to the finance and business section. So section C1 relates to travel and expense reimbursements for 2023 and 2024. And section 2 is the approval of the tentative budget as set forth in detail in the agenda and as Mr. Heiser had described in the presentation earlier. May I get a motion for approval of items 1 and 2, please?
So moved.
Any comments or questions? Okay, this is a roll call vote.
Mrs. Arcaro Burns,
Yes.
Mrs. Fowles Macaluso, Dr. Myatt, Mrs. Miller, Mrs. Morano, Ms. Romano, Mr. Weeks,
Yes.
Mrs. McCopolis,
Yes.
Mr. Villanueva.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next, we have items 3 through 14 as set forth in the business and finance section of the agenda. May I please get a motion for approval of those items? Second, any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any noes or abstentions? Thank you. Next, employee relations. May I get a motion for approval of items 1 through 10 in that section of the agenda, please? Any comments or questions? All right, and this is also a roll call vote. Mr. Heiser?
Mrs. Arcaro Burns,
Yes.
Mrs. Fowles Macaluso, Dr. Myatt, Mrs. Miller, Mrs. Morano, Ms. Romano, Mr. Weeks,
Yes.
Mrs. McCopolis,
Yes.
Mr. Villanueva.
Yes.
Thank you.
Article 10 of the agenda relates to suspensions and the HIB report, which includes the items that were reviewed in last month's executive session. May I get a motion for approval of Article 10, please?
So moved.
Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Extension.
Anyone else abstaining? Okay. All right. Article 11 includes information regarding our enrollment. Anybody have anything for old business? All right, any new business? Okay, may I get a motion to open our second public comment section regarding anything on or off the agenda, please?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we'll open up the second public comment section and the rules are laid out in the agenda.
Hello, my name is Julianne Hanson. I live at 9 Cedar Avenue. in Somerdale, New Jersey, and I'm a teacher at the UES. I teach 6th grade language arts. So today I'd like to come and share our immeasurable thanks to the staff, cast, crew, and volunteers that are involved in preparing for the UES Spring Musical Seussical Junior. The team has devoted countless hours to make sure that the actors, dancers, makeup, costumes, tech, paint, and stage are perfect. I'd like to also recognize the UES custodial staff of Ross and Jose for keeping our area safe and clean, and it's a big job. And finally, I'd also like to thank the art teachers at the UES for decorating the building with beautiful Seussical artwork. The entire place is turning into a wonderland, and I hope everyone will come out and see our play. Thank you.
You.
I'm Tim Haas and I teach at WAMS. First, I apologize for my appearance. I came up from the baseball fields. Our 7th grade team's getting through tryouts right now. So tryout, quick Wawa session. I'm here now. So who knows what I look like right now, to be honest with you. I just want to thank and commend the WAMS staff for a couple things that have happened recently. Last week, we had the honor of having Marion Lazan visit us. She is a Holocaust survivor. And she came to speak to WAM students about her experiences before, during, and after the Holocaust. Since the 8th grade, the current 8th grade, was not able to hear her speak before, we made arrangements to take the entire school to the high school and use their auditorium. It was a pretty cool moment for me. I actually sat way in the back, dead center, and it was a really cool picture to see both grades quiet and fully attentive and listening to her. It was a really cool image that I've ever snapshotting in my mind. It was cool. This made it possible for all of our students to hear from her and to better understand her experience. I also got to personally meet her in the beginning by accident, so it was really cool to shake her hand. I felt like I was shaking the hand of history. Also, I also want to thank the staff and community members for coming out and seeing our musical, The Addams Family, this past weekend. It was amazing. I got to see it on Sunday afternoon. And every year I'm amazed with how great our crew does. There's definitely so much talent here. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kim Martin and I teach in the district, and I would like to commend Roberts and the staff and students for rocking their socks today in support of Down syndrome. Additionally, Roberts will have their annual STEM week next week. There will be various science-related presentations for the whole school, from Edelman Fossil Park to AmeriCorps Watershed Project and Mad Science. There will be some via Zoom, from places such as Canham Aquarium and Duke Farms about bees and pollination. In-person presentations include subjects such as aviation engineering, pathology, physical therapy, to just name a few. Every year, the parents of the children that attend Roberts are invited to share these science-related professions, and the students will enjoy hands-on learning activities throughout the week. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Greg Haar, social studies teacher at the high school. I'd like to commend my high school colleagues for just a few of the great things that they do. Students in the work-based learning program at the high school just completed a 16-week internship at the Center for Aquatic Sciences located at the Camden Aquarium. Students rotate between working in an office setting, doing special projects, working in animal care. Students record and input data from the animal enclosures. This spring, students will have the opportunity to volunteer with Traveler's Aid, which provides customer service to visitors to the Philadelphia International Airport and provide assistance and information to make those travelers stay pleasant and relaxing. They'll man information desks, be stationed at gates where passengers are deplaning. Students and staff are required to submit background checks with video, in-person training, testing. Excited for the various opportunities that this offers, and hopefully a long-term partnership with Traveler's Aid and the Philadelphia International Airport. Tomorrow, Moorestown High School will host the Moorestown Business Association's monthly membership meeting. We'll honor our employers for their partnership in the work-based learning program. And by the end of this school year, the high school students will have volunteered over 5,000 hours in our partners' businesses. You heard earlier mentioned the senior class trip. This milestone trip would be impossible without the sleep deprivation, selflessness, thoughtfulness, and the tired legs of the MEA members who make this possible. On a personal note, I can testify that that is not hyperbolic. I was on the trip, and it is small hours of sleep, but great hours of joy as we provide for the physical and emotional safety of the students, and made lifetime memories for sure. I commend my colleagues at the UES and the middle school on their theatrical productions. The high school productions had a successful year as well. We don't require outside validation, but we do participate in state level awards programs. So hopefully I'll have more specifics to share with you at a later meeting. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Erin Hart. I work at South Valley. And I'd like to commend my colleagues at South Valley because this past week, first graders spent the week learning about simple machines and reading various books to do a character study on leprechauns. They used all this information to build leprechaun traps. We ended with a scavenger hunt to collect clues to find simple machines used throughout our school and playground. And it was a very big success for all of our first grade friends. So
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Lauren Graff and I teach at Baker, and I would like to commend the Baker staff for joining Home and School to make the district's fundraiser a huge success. The Grand Land Adventure kicked off with character building videos and classroom challenges that filled the hallways with excitement. Teachers helped build enthusiasm by providing engaging and exciting rewards. Flyers, stickers, and daily challenges inspired students to be a huge part of this school-wide adventure. Not only did the Baker students meet the fundraising goal, they surpassed it, which was pretty exciting. The fundraiser came to a close with a dance party that rocked the school. The spring book fair is in full swing at Baker, and the theme this year is Reading is Sweet. Thanks to our home and school volunteers, Baker's hallway and library have been beautifully transformed into a delicious display of candy and books. A special thanks to Baker's librarian, Anne Ferrugia, for building excitement about reading and for working with H&S to promote this important spring event.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
My name is Katie Berman. I live at 6 Murray Road. I just also want to comment. I was the district chair for Home and School for Boosterthon, and not only was it successful at Baker, as was just mentioned, but all 4 schools that participated all exceeded their goal by a large sum of money. We haven't received the total that the district raised, but it was incredibly successful. So we want to thank all of the families that participated and were able to donate, as well as all the principals and the staff for letting Boosterthon come into their school for all those days to be a little bit disruptive, let the kids have a little bit of fun. The dance parties, all the kids had a blast. It was they were a little disappointed that they couldn't get out and run, but they all seemed to really enjoy the glow dance parties that were able to take place at all 4 schools. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for that.
Thank you. All right, any further comments? Seeing none, I'd ask for a motion to close public comment, please.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is there anything for the good of the order?
There we go. Whoa, sorry, everyone. Just want to say a few things. Very excited in my household, Susical. I know it was said a few times. Friday, 4:30 and 7, and Saturday, 11:30 a.m. and 2:30 p.m. Susical at the UES. Also, this past week, I just wanted to commend Mrs. Jessica Noguera and the video production students. I had an opportunity to be an adjudicator at the Burlington County Teen Arts Festival, which took place at Rowan College. About 7 or 8 other local Burlington County high schools submitted video projects. And I just wanted to say Jessica and the students did a phenomenal job. And hopefully she'll be hearing some stuff soon about if any of those projects went forward to the state. So just want to say it was really great to see some of the Moorestown High School creativity up at the higher education level. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Well, seeing nothing further, I'll take a motion to adjourn. All in favor?